G'day, folks. It is the coach here, and it is time to get GOAT. That's it. Ready to talk all things Beast of Chaos. How good's this? Check that out. Am I like a legit streamer now or what? We are talking Beasts of Chaos. Pulled out the mad stops here. Even pulled out, I don't know if you've seen these dice. I got given these dice like ages and ages ago.
Oh,
They're
what?
like my technical. Yeah, some one of the legends in Discord, funnily enough, had sent me some Barnhammer dice, but they're GOAT dice. So I always said if I ever played Beasts of Chaos, I'd pull those out, and I thought it was a great timing. But I am here, folks, with Roz, aka Matt Nguyen, aka the Nog. I had to
The
pull that in.
Nooge. That's how Honest War Gamers sing it. The Nooge.
The Nooge. I thought it was a Nog. You're a Nog. Like, what is a Nog? But we're talking Beasts of Chaos, and what got the Nooge here is that not only is Matt a great person, but he also went 4-1 at the Las Vegas Open with the Beasts of Chaos. I set you a challenge, and I'd said to you in Discord that I would get you onto the channel talking all things Beasts of Chaos if you could at least go 3-2. I thought that would be the benchmark. Not a lot of people are doing well with Beasts of Chaos. Challenge accepted. And you went bloody 4-1.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, considering how I started in 2.0, Beasts of Chaos was one of my first armies, and then when I got into like the RTT and event scene around here, there's this joke that we have in our local community that I literally had like a 19% win rate. But I didn't care. I had fun. Like BOC is like one of my first loves. I got into BOC because I was playing Warhammer Total War into Warhammer Total War 2, and Beastmen's one of my favorite factions. I was like, oh, I wonder with how they play in the game if they play the same way in the tabletop. Kinda, but then I still love the army because I love the theme. I love just like, the beasts in the forests and stuff like that. And well, after playing Beasts of Chaos for a really long time, and then so before I took Beast to LVO, I actually was gonna play Giants, but then my proxies were not approved. But then I was kind of bummed by that because I think I was trying to go for top Giants. But then I was thinking, you know what? I haven't played BOC in a while, and let's bring out my Bullcores. They're literally my favorite models in that whole line, even though they're like old and everything. And, to me, it was just fun because I think I pick an army, regardless of how good it is, which is why I played BOC for so long. Because if I love playing it, then I'll always keep playing it. So then, I had to paint 27 Bullcores before LVO. I only had 6 painted, so I really owe Tom and another buddy of mine, Gabe, for helping me paint all those Bullcores in time. And then, well, I took it to LVO. I know what to do with it, and then turned out pretty good. So yeah.
This is incredible. I've got, folks, I've got to manually bring up the comments on the chat, by the way. So if you're wondering what's going on or why chat's called, but like you guys are making me click like a million times right now. Like it's unbelievable. People are throwing money at me because you and I showing off our shoulders. We even actually accidentally came on stream. Like
we're apparently matching right now. Yeah,
we're matching. Like it's absolutely, it's time to get GOAT. But you've obviously had a great run. I've seen you talking a lot of good theory and good maths hammering about the Beast of Chaos. And, I've had some great people on the channel in the past. Joel McGrath definitely has been on the channel in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd edition talking about BOC. And it really feels like the stars kind of started to align for you because you obviously had a points drop in the winter FAQ. Well deserved. You had some Broken Realms rules come into play. Unfortunately for you, you didn't have the White Dwarf. Actually, I even mentioned you. I even said in the White Dwarf kind of video that, you went 4-1 without the White Dwarf supplement. And I only can wonder what you would have done if you had it. But funnily enough, Matt has literally raced over from an RTT, a one-dayer, went 3-0 with the Beast of Chaos, I hope. It was Beast of Chaos, right? Please don't tell me you played Gargants.
No, I played my BOC. I just love my cows. Moo.
So, you've obviously come in literally with the White Dwarf experience as well. So even though you went 4-1, again, outstanding accomplishment at the LVO. Without these rules, you've actually now already put some of these into play. And we're going to talk about your experience on 3rd edition and how you see it as a BOC player, how you've kind of handled so far with the current meta, whether it's, long strike and mortal wound output from range, if it's going to be the hero hammer and the armor save, what you've kind of learnt so far, the impacts of coherency, but then also how are these rules coming into play? And I'll kind of get your take as well. But how do you find BOC? I guess first off, why BOC to the LVO? I know you mentioned not having a Gargant approved. Is that literally you had no other armies?
That was pretty much the only reason. So otherwise, I was probably gonna take my Megas because they're also a fun army to play. Not as much thinking as BOC, but it's fun. Yeah.
I mean, they're a great. What were you expecting? Because I know when I said to you, go 3 and 2, and I get you on the channel, get your experience. You were like, oh, I think you didn't think I had any faith in you.
No, I didn't think that. I think I didn't have any fate. Kind of I thought it was gonna be hard because of there's long strikes, there's dragons, there's megas, there's maw crushes, and just really fast things that can kill. I mean, most of BOC is a 5-up save, maybe a 4-up save at best. So that's why I was kind of scared of all those things. And I guess before I get into my thoughts about BOC, right before I took it to LVO and their place in 3rd edition, I guess I'll answer 2 of the questions in the chat if that's okay.
Look at you, professional streamer. It's like you've done this
so I guess to answer Flaming Go Pie, or what's the name?
So I got into Flamingo Pie.
Yeah, so I got into BOC from Warhammer 1 when they came out as the first DLC. So that's when I fell in love with the army, and I just saw Minotaurs or Bulgors, and they just kind of went ham. And then the other question, the armies that I fought, Perkins. So I'll name it right now. So my first matchup was Sylvaneth. That was actually my only loss at LVO, and that was against Nick Garcia. He's one of the best Sylvaneth players I know. Awesome painter too. Definitely recommend him. And then second game was against Legion of the First Prince. Third game was against Nighthaunt with 150, 160 bodies, ignoring all my rend. Fourth game was against Megas, and it was actually against someone from the AOS Coach Discord. I think her name is Penny, or on the Discord.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think I know who you're talking about.
And then game 5 was against Ironjaws. So yeah, those were all my matchups for LVO. And then I will say, when it comes to the toughest matchups, in my opinion, I will actually say my toughest matchups were definitely Nighthaunt, because just ignoring all the rend, and it just came down to dice at that point, because I think with some of how their rules work, they can basically get to a 5-up Feel No Pain across their entire army, and they have a lot of debuffs. And that game was really clutch, because he kind of mispositioned Olander, so I was able to get a 9-inch charge with some Enlightened, killed her, and then with my Doombolt Masters of Magic, I was able to unbind a lot of the spells. So yeah, that worked out, and then I was able to pass the Nighthaunt DPS check. And then Sylvaneth was actually hard for me, because they can stack so many saves and they can be everywhere, and they actually have a really good magic dominance, which I think BOC struggles with, and that's why I bring Masters of Magic to deal with that. I mean, that game, he won by 1 point. And then the other Megas is hard because it's pretty much a DPS check, but I had enough control that I was able to deal with that and Ironjaws. Going against Ironjaws and Megas, it's almost the same thing, kind of. And then Legion of the First Prince, I just had a lot of control, and I think he kind of underestimated BOC, so he kind of put his Great Unclean One out with the 5-up, and then Bellicor and Bulgors just do Bulgor things. Yeah.
This is the longest I haven't spoken on my channel. You can just keep going, man. Just feel free
sorry
to
if I was talking
running.
too fast. I think I just
excited. No, it's great. It's great, absolutely. And the chat is just off the charts here, folks. It's just absolutely insane. I'm getting asked about OnlyFans links where people are just telling you to make your bed. People are, and obviously, and I just mentioned it, you just won an RTT or a local event as well. So you've obviously got some practical experience when it comes to running the new Beast of Chaos. But and there's so much to unpack there, mate. You've given me a nightmare. First off, Nighthaunt has obviously announced that there's a new battle tome coming. We know there's going to be a box that'll come in the near future. Does that concern you at all, given that there's been so many, at least in my country and a lot of other countries? I don't think you had the Mortal Realms magazine, but certainly there is a lot of Nighthaunt players. Do you think that's going to be like a natural predator to BOC when that battle tome comes out?
I mean, regardless of how strong the Nighthaunt battle tome is, I actually still think it's going to be pretty good against BOC because they can get as many bodies and MSU on the board as we can, and they have really good magic, especially if they bring Nagash. And I played against a Nagash Nighthaunt list, and I only won, in my opinion, because Nagash miscasted like 3 times throughout the entire game. So yeah, I think if Nighthaunt is able to just, they're probably going to be immune to Rend again. They have good spell casting, and they're another Horde army. It actually challenges BOC because that's what we like to do. So I think it'll be fun. It'll be a fun challenge.
And you don't quite have the range to take them out. And this is obviously not the Nighthaunt show, and we don't know what's coming out. By the way, Aki, thank you so much for your donation. I think you've thrown money at me twice now. It's only been like 10 minutes of live streaming. I feel like I should do more Beasts of Chaos. If it's just like a stripper and you're just kind of throwing cash at us. Did Matt's sister go to the LVO? I feel like there's some things that I'm missing here from the chat. Maybe I shouldn't bring up some of this stuff.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Well, you did get a tattoo from going 4-1, so.
Oh yeah, well, I got to show it off for the audience. So yeah, I got this tattoo right after I got my 4-1.
Your camera, oh, there we go. I was going to say your internet's being a bit potato at the moment, so they can see it now.
Oh, okay. Is the internet better now?
It's all good, man. It's all good. I can hear you perfectly, so it's all good.
Yeah.
So what were the keys to your success? But let's actually rally back first, because you've already kind of given me so much great content. I want to kind of chunk back a little bit to go, well, what was it about your 4-1 run that helped you be successful? Was it yourself? Was it something that has happened in the past? Like, so I know you ran Bulgors, for example, and we will go over your LVO list as well as the list that you're going to be playing with at the moment, like how it's changed because of White Dwarf. Is it the points adjustment? Was it you found a good match at the moment with the current meta for certain things? Because you just don't see much Beasts of Chaos. And I know one of the big complaints is the coherency rules, the lack of bravery, the only ability to only do Inspiring Presence 1, which impacts like gores and ungores and a lot of those, big, heavy waves of bodies. What were your keys to success, maybe?
So I guess to start off with, I played Beast for a long time in 2.0, and I had a great understanding of the army, but I feel like because of how second edition played, which was, I love second edition, but I think a lot of it played for killing, which isn't what Beast of Chaos is like great at. I mean, no, it can be good at it, but like we have to be able to take a hit. So when third edition came around and battle tactics came and everything, it made me actually think. Actually, I was actually pretty down about Beast of Chaos for a long time when 3.0 came around because of coherency and everything, and I thought it just killed the way I wanted to play lists. So I only started thinking about it when I started playing Bulgors just for fun at little RTTs we did, or just TTS. And then I realized how hard Bulgors hit. So because they're 5-up save, but they're glass cannon, and depending on what weapon option you take, you can either take the paired axe, which is 2 damage, or the great axe, which is 3 damage. And then I was thinking, okay, cool, Bulgors do a lot of damage, but if they die, then, well, I can't really do anything. So what does BOC need? We need a lot of control. And I will go into the control aspect of my list when we look at the LVO list. And then I hope that makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And I think, I know when the coherency stuff came out for third edition, a lot of your damage was coming out of units like Bulgors, as you've already mentioned. Yet when coherency came in and you reinforced the unit of Bulgors into 6, it starts kind of playing around and you can't get them all into combat. And I know there was a lot of questions and a lot of bit of frustrations to go, well, why would I reinforce Bulgors if I have a unit of 6, but I can't get them all into combat? It's a bit of redundancy. Am I better off going 3s? What am I thinking? Where am I going? And I don't think we've kind of seen any good competitive lists up until your point. I haven't seen, I think what was it? Bill Sousa might have done really well with it, but he like spammed Cockatrice, so there was some craziness, but it wasn't.
He was right spamming
the traditional.
Yeah, he's
It wasn't
spamming
traditional. It
Cockatrices,
wasn't.
and then
Yeah.
Gavin, he was going a bunch of Zongors and Wizards, and that special tech with that list is that if Zongors have a banner and they're by a bunch of Wizards, they just do a bunch of Mortals if you're in range. So yeah, it's just weird tech, but yeah. And then, sorry, go on.
Do you think Zangors? Because one thing that I was thinking about with the new rules is we haven't seen a lot of Zangors for a long time, whether it's Skyfires, Enlightened, or even the Zangor on foot. I remember Dan Bradshaw in first edition, or might have been at the cusp of second edition, had won the UK Masters off the back of Zangors, and I think it was with BOC. Yeah. Gavin did do well. I do remember Gav's list. I do apologize that one. But do you reckon there's a place for Zangor at the moment?
It really depends how you build the list. I mean, I've kind of thought about for fun. It's like, oh, what if I run like 60 Zongor, and they're about 2 wounds each, so they're a lot of bodies. And now with the rules where you can just rally on a 4-up, it has a lot of potential. They don't really do any damage, but I think if you want to go the bodies route and just pure tankiness, I would just go with just a bunch of Dragon Ogres instead of Zongors. Although Zongors do have spice.
They do have spice, and they've got the little shields as well, which help. But yeah, Dragon Ogres are certainly a sleeper. I think mostly because people just don't want to buy the old models. Very staticky and, obviously resin printing and all that stuff out there. But you don't really see many, the Thunderscorn side. But look, what I might do is I actually might just bring up some of the rules. So, for anyone who hasn't, I know some countries haven't gotten the White Dwarfs just yet, Australia being one of them. You obviously got updates to the White Dwarf, and there's been a whole bunch of updates. Both you got grand strategy, battle tactics. So we'll talk maybe a little bit about what you've got given. And I'd love to get your perspective on how you're thinking about this. What does it mean to you? Has it changed your list, or even maybe how the way you look at some of the units? So I might actually just bring that up now and go, cool. All right, well, first things first, man, we had the update to the Herdstone. I was going to call you the Brayherd. No, the Herdstone. Now, there were some big changes with the Herdstone. Specifically, you lost the Battle Shock immunity. So it used to obviously have the area of effect where you wouldn't take Battle Shock within, if you were wholly within the radius. And then there was some shenanigans around reducing the save characteristic of enemies within the radius by 1. Instead, you've got a new war scroll. It's been completely rewritten. You get a rend -1 boost to every unit board wide. And then from battle round 3, it becomes rend -2 instead of rend -1. The other one is that instead of getting the Battle Shock immunity, you do get a half the models flee. So should you fail a Battle Shock test, if 4 models would flee, it's only 2. Maths.
Yeah,
Matt, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the Herdstone, and has it changed anything?
So while I will miss the Battle Shock immunity, because that was kind of nice, especially when it got into later terms of the game where it was like 30 inches and just Battle Shock immunity, I feel like it's such a minor loss compared to what we've received instead. The biggest problem with BOC was Rend. I mean, it's easy for us to stack Rend and everything, but all of our spells have to go off, or the Herdstone has to get close to, it has to expand enough where they'll be in the aura. And, if an opponent knows how to deal with BOC, they just stay out of the aura. I mean, until it's turn 4, but then at that point, it doesn't matter. So I feel like when I saw that all BOC units are getting additional Rend 1 at the start of turn 1 to battle round 3, and then it goes up to 2, that to me just I remember I was about to go to sleep and you sent me the leaks, and I literally just I couldn't sleep. Literally only went to work for literally went to work with 2 hours of sleep because I was just so excited about the rules. Because the biggest reason why I'm excited about the Ren change is that it makes a lot of things more viable in BOC. Because the reason why I took Bulgors besides the fun factor is that Bulgors were the only things that hit really hard in the book, in my opinion, right before we got the White Dwarf rules. And now, Dragon Ogres can actually, like, hit pretty decently hard. Zongor Enlightened, after testing Zongor Enlightened through TTS recently and winning the RTT, they're downright amazing. And even the monsters,
Why?
Gorgons,
No,
Chimeras.
stop. Why? Don't make a comment like that and then move on
Oh,
and talk about
my bad.
Gorgons. Why? No. But like for the folks at home, like I can see Caleb, the Zinch legend, is in the chat, and I know he's been excited about Skyfires. Why would you say that Skyfires and or Enlightened really benefit from this Herdstone ability?
So usually with Skyfires, their melee profile and the Enlightened melee profile, the spears and the discs, they're usually Rend 1, which, was great in 2.0, but then in 3.0, because of all defense, save stacking, not so great. So the fact that the discs with the Skyfires and the Enlightened, and then plus the spears, start off with Rend 2, and then it goes up to Ren 3 in Battle Round 3, just make their output so much more, especially when you consider Skyfires. If they charge in first, and Skyfires are the ones with the bows, and if they charge in first and fight, they get to reroll all hits and wounds, which raises their output tremendously with the amount of Rend. So yeah, it's got some spice.
Yeah, I think the only thing, like I was actually talking to Caleb about this, and one of the challenges that Skyfires have is that most of the damage comes from the disc, if I remember correctly, and the disc only has range 1, so it's really good as a unreinforced unit, but you start to lose attacks pretty quickly when you reinforce them. So keep that in mind. But at the same time as well, I love the ability to maybe hold them back a little bit. They're really fast. I think they're like movement 12 or movement 14. You can hold them back and then kind of launch them in turn 3. And the Skyfires and the Enlightened have some shenanigans around fighting first and fighting last, and all the reroll stuff. So really good potential unit in your list.
Yeah, especially with the Enlightened with the spears, so not the Skyfires, because with their spears are 2 inches, so you're actually able to get in a bigger unit of Skyfires with Enlightened, or even the Foot Enlightened, and they just do a lot of output. And then it's because they have, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but because they all have the Brayherd keyword, they get +3 move. So if they're on a disc, they go from 16 to 19-inch move. So yeah, they're fast.
Yeah, and it is a great piece of scenery, as Fungoid Cave Dwarf said. It's an absolute cracking piece of terrain. You were talking Gorgon. You were talking the Gorgon, and the Gorgon started to improve slowly over time. Initially, it was a bit of a joke and it didn't do a lot. Now it legitimately scares me. That Gorgon, even in turn 1 to turn 3, it is a significant threat.
Yeah. I mean, right now, the Gorgon is 150 or 155 points, and it's 5 attacks, 3 damage.
Sorry, how much?
155 points.
It's 155 points?
Yeah.
I'm paying 175 for a baby Gargan at the moment. I would have had them on par. Give me a discount.
Yeah, I think the trade-off with the Gorgon is that, it can't run and charge. It moves about 8 or 7, and then it has a 5-up save. So it's not hard to kill. That's kind of the theme with a lot of BOC. A lot of us we're a horde army of glass cannons and control.
So I want to flip the coin here for a second, because I think we could talk about their benefits. Like when I did my little White Dwarf video, I could have talked until the cows came home, literally, on the Rend improvements, from the monsters to the heroes. I talked about the Beast Lord on foot. You could talk about the Doombull. You could talk about the Dragon Ogres. You literally talk about any part of this and the benefits of the Rend +1 or Rend +2 to the characteristic. And then I had mentioned some of the spells you can add even further boost to Rend, right? There's some, not so far off. You could do Rend -7 on some units.
Yeah, I mean, Sorry, go on.
No, please keep going. I'm going to ask you a question, so make your point.
Yeah, I guess the nice thing about the Ren buff too is that it even buffs like weaker units like Bestigors, Ungors, and Gores. You can easily get them. You can easily get an 80-point unit of Ungors up to like 2 Rend. So it's just funny.
And that was definitely one of the upsides as well, because even if you do run Centigore or some type of cheap chaff, as an opponent, I can no longer just look through them and have a laugh, because they do have, look, your to hit profile isn't the greatest. I mean, you are paying, peanuts for your units, but come turn 3, turn 4, they can still do damage. So it's great to have that reliability. But what I wanted to ask you was the other side of the fence. When you look at the Battle Shock immunity bubble that you used to have, and now you've lost it, does that change the way you look at your army? Or, do some units now no longer become sexy? Like for me, the temptation to reinforce a unit of Gore or Ungore probably has diminished a lot, because they now need even more babysitting with poor bravery. But do you feel the same way, or has it nothing changed for you?
Honestly, nothing has really changed for me because usually if something wants to kill a POC unit, it just dies, in my
Yeah.
experience. So it doesn't even matter if there's. I mean, the Battle Shock community was nice, and it was a fun time. But I feel like because we got all these buffs in compensation for it, it just doesn't feel like much of a loss. And with how Locus of Savagery works right now, it has the models that
The
flee the
models that
unit,
flee. Yeah.
which makes up for it. And then you can rally on a 4-up. And the Herdstone range starts off as 12, so you always rally easily. And you'll probably get a 4-up like good half the time.
I thought about that as a benefit, and I'm like, right, that could sound really good, but your troops mostly want to be in combat. So you got to remember to pull your units out of combat in order to get them, especially if you get the double turn, remove them from combat, and then apply this ability to do the rally on a 4-up. But I was thinking about the potential, especially with like Dragon Ogres, with Bulgor, with any of these multi-wound units, especially those hard hitters, to bring back a Bulgor on a 4-up is potentially awesome, especially if you're running like units of 6.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And I feel like BOC likes to dictate when we get the engagements we want. And also something else I just thought of just now is that with how rallying on a 4-up works, if you're going against like a shooting army of like, let's say, long strikes, Lumineth with sentinels, and you have some units left and you're able to pass like the leadership bravery, you just rally on a 4-up. Like you don't BOC kind of used to worry about shooting armies, and now I feel like this is a really good answer against just like shooting. It's fantastic.
It is, but if I was a bow snake, Daughters of Cain, if I'm the long strikes, I'm not shooting your Gore and Ungore. I'm shooting your characters. I'm taking out the Bray Shaman. I'm taking, I'm bringing down the Gorgon to half strength. I'm doing those types of damage. I'm not focusing on your Doom Bull is another one I want to take out. But I think overall, and maybe we kind of wrap up the point here. And Raymond's asked a good question. Would you agree that the grass is greener with these updates?
Yes. I feel like it has definitely leveled the playing field where we could definitely match a lot of the top tier factions. And I already felt like we were actually a dark horse in the current meta with how things are. And I think I'll explain that when we talk about the LVO list. It'll make a lot more
Cool.
sense.
All right, let's do some rapid fire ones, because some of these ones will be quite quick to respond with. You had the change in the new grand strategy. I really personally like this one. My comments on the video was I thought this was a relatively easy one to achieve and to deny your opponent. What are your thoughts on the grand strategy? So for people who can't read, maybe they're away from their screen, or they whatever it might be. Basically, it's a double grand strategy. You need to keep your opponent away from 9 inches, and it has to stop being smashed to rubble. So you could get your enemy within 9, but as long as you stop them from smashing to rubble, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a great grand strategy. I've been playing with it on TTS and the recent RTT ever since the White Dwarf leaked. And in my opinion, it's amazing for the simple reason that because you're not really reliant on like the Ren buff because it's battlefield wide, you can just kind of stick it in the back and you just chill. And then because someone might really want to deny the grand strategy because it's not hard to roll a 3 up, they will always overcommit to try to kill it. And that works for me because BOC is a counterpunch army. We like for you to come to us and then we smack you back. And then I
Well,
think yeah. So
well, that
then
was what
also
I was gonna call this out because Gareth made a good comment. Is that it's you're putting a target on your faction terrain, and then it becomes a priority. And I don't know if you want to be putting that type of emphasis and focus on your terrain piece. So I guess how would you respond to that?
in my opinion, that's actually fine because with the way I can deploy the Herdstone away from the other objectives, if they want to overcommit so much just to kill the Herdstone, that's fine with me because I can do my control, I can do my punch, or I just go to the objectives. And it's like, okay, cool. You might be able to kill the Herdstone, and if you did, how much did you lose? And that's kind of the strategy I play around, and it's worked out for me tremendously.
Is there anything that you do to protect the Herdstone? So it's and spoiler alert, Matt has started playing with this particular grand strategy. So maybe twofold is one, how are you protecting the Herdstone with your troops, and then what were you running, and what have you given up to take this grand strategy?
So essentially, what I do is that I basically so in battle round 1, I just kind of the way I deploy is that I deploy so defensively that no one can like deep strike. There's gonna be no Manfred that can just come within 9 or a fox. I think the named fox character that just comes in and just destroys it by just tapping on it. And essentially, they have to go through so many bodies that it's effectively screened. And as the game goes on, I still because our summoning is so good now, all I have to do is just summon a unit by it, or just keep one of my my Shaggoth or one of my casters, and then it's effectively like screened. And then if someone gets within 3, is coming to it, I just redeploy, and then they have to charge my um model or unit before they can touch the Herdstone.
Yeah, I think I think it's damned if you do. Like, a lot of abilities are coming from the Herdstone. So if you want to shut down some of these abilities we've talked about, aka the rend things, your opponents are going to want to smash it. So you really need to think about protecting it. It's more than just having because most people that I play against, they used to just have like a Brace Shaman and maybe like the sacrificial Gore or Ungore, and that was kind of all they would use around the Herdstone, and then kind of everything else kind of went forward. Now I think you've got to really start thinking about what protects the Herdstone, and really thinking through. Do you have monster opponents that can teleport, that can come within range? Thinking about base sizes and thinking about what you can do to kind of stop people from getting into your backfield, because you are absolutely putting a target on the head of the Herdstone that already had a target.
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying, it's honestly super matchup dependent how I place my Herdstone, and because I've been fortunate enough to play a lot of AOS thanks to my local community, and I get to see all the factions, and I own a good amount of armies, I generally have an idea what most armies do. So I'm always able to deploy the Herdstone most of the time in a position where I'm always going to make them overcommit for it, no matter what. Like I'm not gonna make it easy for them.
I
And if
think
I'm
what's
going
cool
against
as
like let's
well.
say oh sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, because that the rend boost has no range effect, it's just board wide, you could essentially put the Herdstone in a corner completely away from objectives, and then you're forcing an opponent to A, go and focus on the Herdstone, or B, do you start fighting for control, for battle tactics, for objective control? So you can, if you're smart, play around with movement. I just wouldn't put it immediately front and center, easy to achieve when your opponent races up the board.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to. That's why I literally just stick it in the back now. Where before with the old Hearthstone, I would kind of stick it like up towards the front because I wanted the old -1 save debuff to go earlier. But yeah.
Yeah, dig it. Cool. You have a couple of battle tactics. Now, I was kind of on the fence with these new battle tactics. I thought there were some interesting ones. There were some ones that I wasn't a big fan of. Specifically, was it Wrath of the Warp? Yeah, No, what was it?
So, or is it Fury of the Wild?
Yeah, it was Fury of the Wild because it was only in battle round 1. And I felt that was really counterintuitive that I'd want to have my general and 2 units in combat in turn 1. And because you can't use it in any other turn. Obviously, general aside, depends on who your general is, but I thought that one was a really weird one at least. What were your thoughts on the 3 battle tactics?
So to start off with Fury of the Wild, since we're talking about it, in my opinion, it sucks because, well, it's forcing you to play in a way that BOC does not want to play. And most of the time, if they're in their deployment zone, and, depending on the unit you have, maybe you move like 6-7 inches or a little more. And what if you fail those charges? And I think with how this battle tactic works is that I think the unit, let's say even if you get that perfect scenario, I think the enemy unit still has to be alive because it says at the end of the turn.
I didn't call that out of my video, and when I was going through the editing process of my White Dwarf video, I realized I forgot to mention that because if you go in with, let's say, a Doom Bull, let's say Doom Bull is your general, and you have a unit of Doom Bull, and you have an Ungor, you have something, right? And you go in, and you've got to survive the combat. So having a Beast Lord is probably not going to survive a combat if it's depending on who's in your face. But then, yes, if you overkill the opponent, or they fail battle shock, guess what? You've just lost your battle tactic. I thought it was super niche. I was thinking like if Iron Jaws charges at my face and I'm like locked in turn 1 combat, then it's a low risk battle tactic. Outside of that, I thought it was really situational.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly situational, and the only matchup I can honestly think this would be like maybe worthwhile in is against megas because you're probably not going to kill a mega a turn usually. So other than that, nah, it just feels like you have to punish yourself and overextend yourself so much just to get this random battle tactic that is really easy to fail. And even if you get the battle tactic, well, you just overextend your general, and then they just get Slay the Warlord. In our BOC, heroes are not hard to kill.
And that was my problem, is if I'm having, like, I'd have to have a really durable general that would make me confident that I could handle, or what buffs do I need to make that general survivable in combat? And if I'm in combat and I lose the double turn, I lose a priority roll and get double turned, there's a lot of downside to this, especially losing a general early, the extra CP and just like some of the things. So I don't know. What are the other two? Let's not focus too much on Fury of the Wild.
So it's Shadow the Herdstone. That one is really niche, but I do like that one, and I actually use this battle tactic throughout the RTT I just played in today because, well, people really want a gun for the Herdstone. And at first, when I looked at the battle tactic, I actually thought that wasn't going to come up at all. I'm just like, okay, this is niche, it's whatever. But then when I was playing the games at the RTT today, and certain situations come up because every game is different, which is the great thing about Age of Sigmar. And well, a lot of them wanted to kill the Herdstone, and I'm just like, this actually works out. And then I was actually able to score that battle tactic in all 3 of my games. So yeah, it's like, it's niche. I wouldn't always go for it, but it's a nice battle tactic to have.
Yeah, I dig it. Again, I wouldn't plan my battle tactics around this, but you're likely to find people going for your Herdstone. So if that happens, throw that down.
Yeah, it's just an option. It's not an auto pick. It's just an option, which is nice.
And what about the Wrath of the Warped Wild?
So that one is actually really good in my opinion, especially if your opponents cannot screen enough or do not screen well enough, because all you have to do is just like in some battle plans, especially the ones with like, I guess, just 3 objectives, some of the outer objectives, they're within the board edge. And for BOC, all you need to do is just be wholly within 6 inches of the board edge, more than 9 away. And if you're able to like finagle it right, you can actually just like summon, like, let's say a unit of like Ungors and just like steal the objective, especially if they're not screening it. And then I was able to do so before the White Dwarf came out. That was actually like my common tactic that I did to like people all the time, just to steal the objective. And now that this became an actual battle tactic, I think it's really good. It just depends on your opponent not having enough screens or misplaying. So it's a nice option, but yeah.
Yeah, I think in the video I mentioned that it's a good tactic to summon, depending depends on what the battle plan is, right, and how far those objectives are from the side of the board. It might be something that you want to set up in advance. So let's say you go through Slay the Warlord, Broken Ranks, the one aggressive expansion, some of the basic ones, right? You can summon on turn 3, turn 4 a unit, and then kind of hold this one back for a later turn, because should your opponent have the objective, it's going to be really hard to come out. Depending on the battle plan, you might be out of range. You've got, I think I mentioned, like Tuskor Chariots and Razor Gore can reroll their charges. Your Chimera gets +2 to the charge. So if you're relying on the charge, again, it's one that I wouldn't bank a battle tactic on if I had to charge for this one. But I guess it depends. What I'm hearing is it's super situational. Think about
Well,
the
although
battle
I actually
tactic
just
and how.
realized something.
What's
Apparently with
that?
this battle tactic, you don't have to summon on the same turn to take the objective.
No, and that's what I called out. I said you don't have to summon onto the objective. So the low risk play would be to summon the turn before you use this and then throw down Wrath of the Wolf Wilds. If you happen to have a battle tactic where the objective is close to the summoning area and there is no opponent sitting on the objective, this is an easy one. But I think in most cases, I wouldn't bank on a charge to secure this objective with a primarial core unit, because you're just asking a lot of ifs and you're going to fail. And then if I charge with like a Razor Gore or a bloody Tuskor Chariot, there's a good chance it's not going to survive the combat. Like, they're not that good.
No. But yeah.
So yes, no, to answer your question, it doesn't have to be summoned in that turn. It just has to be a summoned unit.
Yeah. Well, now that this is something I actually learned just right now in this video, and well, now that I know that I can just like summon a unit a turn or 2 turns before and then just take it, I actually think it's really good now. I thought it was a niche before because I thought you have to summon it the same turn. Oh, it's fantastic.
No, and again, all the Beast of Chaos milkshakes bring all the boys to the yard, because I've got another donation from Tyler. Thank you so much, Buckets. Beast of Chaos. I'm gonna have to do more content. I might rename myself the Bray Herd.
Yeah.
Anything else from a battle tactic point of view? I think you've got some good ones. I think you've got some that are easy to achieve and some things that are like Fury of the Wild situation.
Yeah. So if I had to honestly rank them, I would say, now that I know how Wrath of the Warped Wild works, that's definitely the best battle tactic out of the new one. And then Shadow the Herdstone is the second one, and the last one's Fury of the Wild. So that's how I would personally rank them.
I'd 100% agree with them. Wrath of the Warped Wilds, you could probably do every game. The other two are super situational. The first one's definitely one that would be easy to do. The middle one, Fury of the Wild, is just question mark. But the sexy part of the update is the monstrous rampages. You got 5 monstrous rampages. One that is universal, so it doesn't require a specific unit. The other 4 are unit specific, right? So you can see on screen here, there's one purely for Gorgon, there's one for Cygors, there's one for Jabberslythe, and there was one for Chimera. So there's 5 in total. You don't give away the other ones like Stomp and Roar and Titanic Jewel, so you now have literally like 9 monstrous rampages to pull from, which is insane.
Yep. It's fantastic. And I think if we have to start off with Primal Roar, so that to me is the best monstrous action out of all the new ones we've gotten. Simply for the fact that if you roll hot, which like I was actually able to lucky that there were several times where I rolled 6s in the RTT I just played, I was able to summon a Chimera in turn 2. That takes 10 summoning points usually. So my dice just spiked, and in 3 games there was a Chimera out turn 2, and before the White Dwarf, it was rare for a Chimera to come out until turn 4, maybe turn 3 if you're running all herd. But now,
I was going to ask you, were you running all herd or not?
No sub faction.
Okay.
Yeah. So then at best you summon a Chimera, and at worst, after 2 turns you get to summon 3 Enlightened on discs, and we were just talking about how strong they are. So yeah, it's nice.
And what I love about this one, and I mentioned it in the video, is that you don't even have to be in combat for this one. Like you
No.
could literally have, I mentioned the Shaggoth. The Shaggoth has a monster keyword. Or if you had a Cygor in the backfield, you had a Cockatrice. Your Cockatrice could do this, get you some summoning points because it's not reliant on you being in combat, which I thought
Nope.
is a brilliant little tactic.
Yeah, and you can do it in both player turns, which makes it, like, to me, instantly the best monstrous action out of the White Dwarf.
Yeah, it's big. It's really big. And then obviously you got the feast on anything else from Primal Raw. I really like it. Again, you mentioned All Herd to stack. I couldn't see too many other ways to get bonus primordial
mean,
call points.
The only thing I have to say now is that I always thought our summoning was, like, pretty good, and now it feels top tier. It's honestly, to me, kind of insane. I'm surprised that Games Workshop gave this to us, but hey, I guess we get to have our time in the sun.
No, they've just got too many Beasts of Chaos models in the warehouse. They need to sell every Beast of Chaos player like an in-depth roster of summoning units. So
They need to sell all the
good work.
metal, BOC, and the fine cast.
Getting rid of all the inventory. Feast on Flesh, I really like this one because the Gorgon, unfortunately, it's a once per battle thing. Now, if you have multiple Gorgons, it means you can obviously do it more than once, just once per Gorgon model. And it allows you to improve the Rend characteristic by 1 in that combat until the following combat phase, sorry. Which is great because then it obviously stacks with the Rend characteristic already on the profile, as well as the Rend from the Herdstone, assuming it hasn't been destroyed. Then as well, when it slays a model or it slays models in that particular combat, it heals up wounds equivalent to the models it slays. So if it slays a bunch of 2 wound models, it's going to be healing two wounds per model it kills. So, it could easily heal up to full with a decent combat.
Yeah. So
Thoughts?
so I guess my thoughts on this is that I guess if you really build around Gorgons, then like it can work, but you're also really you also have to think about it this way. Gorgon has a 5-up save, so it's not really hard to kill. And also you have to make sure it gets into combat, and then you have to make sure it survives. Like usually if you charge into Gorgon first, it's just gonna kill. And then well, I mean, like I said, it's not bad because, well, you start out with the new BOC Herdstone buffs. I think the Gorgon starts off at like Ren 2 or Ren 3. This is before the turn 3 buff. So then now you can get an additional Rend. So if you just time it right and just do some shenanigans, the Gorgon's gonna be like Ren 5. And so that, that kills things.
And then you've also got spells as well that can increase the Rend as well to Rend 6. I was looking at the I'm just bringing up the profile now. There was what was it? I mean, the butchering blades, for example, it's got Rend -1 for 3 damage apiece. You add an extra Rend 1 there. It's now Rend 2 plus the Herdstone. It's now Rend -3 in turn 1. Yeah. Doing 3 damage apiece, doing 5 attacks. I think a smart player, like whenever I've seen a Gorgon on the table, I've always tried to put it down to half strength, just because when it takes 7 wounds, the profile is not a threat. No. Like you really got to keep it within like 0 to 6 wounds.
Yeah, and I mean that's the case with most BOC monsters. If they take more than 3 wounds, they just degrade like crazy, which is why, like, I personally don't run a lot of BOC monsters unless I want to summon them into the list because all these things are so niche. But it's nice. It's a nice option that it's there, and like, hey, maybe it's really clutch that your Gorgon is at low wounds. You're able to kill things, especially if you're allowed to do like the Roar command ability. So he just fights at full strength, and then maybe he heals everything. So
would you, if you had a seat, would you want to do that, or would you prefer to do all out attack on a Gorgon?
No, I would prefer to do the Gur command ability because I think if he degrades, he just loses attacks or loses Rend or something like that. Like he just loses so much after he takes like 3 wounds.
Who was it? Someone in the chat made a really good comment. Duck Dictator was mentioning that they like to use the Gorgon in Dark Walkers, being able to put them into reserve. Because obviously it's not just Brayherd, but also Warherd and Thunderscorn. Any thoughts on that? I guess that's one way for it to avoid getting damage dealt to it, especially like if it starts charging and there's missile weapons. A good unit of Iron Drakes, Long Strikes, Bow Snakes could probably do probably enough wounds to degrade it a fair amount.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun trick that you could put in Dark Walkers and make it come out of ambush turn 1, because Dark Walkers lets you ambush Thunderscorn, which is Dragon Ogres, and Warherd, which is Bulgors and Gorgons. So it's a fun trick, but you also have to think about it this way. You have to make the charge, and then you have to make sure if they don't have Overwatch. And then what if you get roared at? There's so many factors where it's like you have to make sure the stars align to make sure nothing happens to the Gorgon and he's able to do what he really likes to do. And if he whiffs, which happens a lot of the time, he's just a free monster point. Like, yeah, he's just sitting in the enemy like backline, just being a free monster point, and they could easily get up to like 3 or 4 victory points just off killing that Gorgon with another monster.
Block Tofu mentions a good point is that, if they're shooting at your Gorgon, it definitely means that they're not shooting at like your the units that you really don't want them to shoot at, your Bulgors, your Doom Bulls, your Dragon Ogres, any of those other critical units that you prefer not to focus on. But to your point, the likelihood of it getting into combat at full strength is probably slim. And you're right, when it dies, it does give away that monster point. So that's a rule while we play in the Gurish Heartlands. But for 155 points, it's definitely good value, I think. If nothing more, it's a distraction piece for the rest of your force because people want to be putting damage onto it. But I probably wouldn't overinvest in it unless you had some crack ideas.
Yeah, and I guess to address Block Tofu in the chat, yeah, they want to shoot. If they shoot my Gorgon, they're not shooting other things. But at that point, BOC has so many like chaff units, they could just do the same job. I could just ambush them in turn 1 or summon them in, and then it's like, cool, I don't have to charge. But then now, if I'm going against long strikes, they have to keep in mind, okay, do I shoot the Bulgors or do I shoot the Bestagors or something that was just summoned in my back line? So, and I feel like with BOC, because we are so squishy, we do not want to give that many victory points easily.
Yeah, you're not going to win the war of attrition, poor old BOC. Anything else you'd mention about the Gorgon / the Primordial Call trait, or should we look into the other 3?
I think we said enough about the other 2. I think tomorrow for the RTT, because I'm being a ringer, because I'm hosting an event, I might take 4 Gorgons for fun. So we'll see.
I think. Would I take a Gorgon? Yes, I would. Would I take 2? I'd have to really think about the strategy and what I'm trying to achieve and how I'm buffing it and what am I not taking instead. That's probably what I'd be thinking. Now, I said Cygors in my video, I didn't like them, and I still don't like them. And I think the current meta right now, with there not being a lot of endless spells on the table, when we used to have 2, 3, 4 endless spells on the table, I could definitely see value in this. But I just found that the damage profile is inconsistent. I've never been impressed with the rock attack. And then getting a boost on endless spells, which aren't consistent on the tournament. And by the way, folks, if you are a Cygor lover and you got 5 Cygors on the shelf, you run the Cygors to your heart's content. But if I was going to a major tournament, would I build a strategy around Cygors? I don't think this Monstrous Rampage is enough to get me to build it into a competitive list. What's your points? Am I wrong?
So here's actually kind of like my hot take on Cygors is that, like, are they great right now? No, because the meta is not, there's not a lot of magic at the moment. I mean, yeah, there's Seraphon and Lumineth, but then it's just so like niche, and there's not, like you said, there's not a lot of endless spells too. And the shooting attack is like okay, but if things become more magic heavy, I could honestly like make a case for it. Like, I think it's so meta dependent. Like, let's say if we go back to a lot of magic, then I would probably take 1 or 2 Cygors actually.
Yeah, like we're in the Gurish Heartlands right now, so it's all benefiting monsters, But what happens in GHB 2022 if it was, I don't know, the land of magic? let's say it's Magic gone wild, and there's all these boosts to the Magic, and we're now to points go down on endless spells, and we go into that meta. Absolutely, the Cygor is a great ability to come in. It heals. It gets a whole bunch of things. So right now, yeah, I'd say no. In the future, I would revisit that.
Yeah. And I mean, the shooting attack, I feel like it's okay. I mean, it either pops off or does nothing. It's kind of one of those like if you're a gambler kind of guys.
Problem is though, is that hits, it's one attack, hits on a 4, wounds on a 2, rend 2 for d6. Would I spend a CP to bring that down to a 3 on one attack? Feels like a dodgy use of a CP when it could end on a damage 1.
Yeah, and I roll a lot of ones, as the SoCal community can vouch for. So I never trust on D6 for me that much.
By the way, Vince Venturella is mentioning that he's recently played double Gorgon, and he felt it was overwhelming, but did find incredible value from the Bestigors and the Zangor Skyfires. So another reinforcement that I think the Skyfires might be a sleeper unit that no one's talking about, that I think could potentially be a great addition to your next tournament list.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking into them a lot more. So, yeah.
Well, you've heard it from me. You've heard it from Vince. You've heard it from Caleb, who's the #1 Zinch in the ITC. Yeah, you're hearing it here, folks. Hot exclusive. Zangor Skyfires are the place to be. Yeah, Cygor, nice. Depends if you're in the what your meta is.
Yeah.
Now, the Jabberslythe is one that I have not been a fan of. When the War Scroll changed between Broken Realms, I was unimpressed with the change. But I've started to see a couple of people swear by it in the Beast of Chaos Facebook group. They're like, I love my Jabberslythe. It did so much damage. Super impressed with it. Now, I'm not sure if I'm missing something or this person just rolling hot, or maybe they have like 50 Jabberslythes sitting on their shelf and they're like trying to sell them in a buy and sell or something. But what's your take on the Jabberslythe? Because I look at this, look, maybe they've got like maybe they're just like a buy and sell kind of person. All right, Duck Dictator's backing me up here. Jabberslythes are bad. What's your take, Matt, and why?
So, as much as I love the Jabberslythe, I love the model and I love the fluff behind it. It's really reliant on in my opinion, your opponent's rolling a lot of 1s, which does the mortal wounds to it. If they roll a lot of 1s, great. If they don't, then it literally does nothing. That's my opinion. And then also on a 4-up, if a melee weapon gets a wound through and you fail it, on a 4-up, you do 1 mortal wound back.
4-up.
Yeah. So it's just like the Jabberslythe is swingy, and I will say the one thing that is really nice about him is that monstrous action, especially if in the current Hero Hammer where we're at, or if you're going against Megas, just goes in, reduces the save by 1 on a 2 to 5 and a 6 -2 save. So yeah, it's niche. Like, I would hesitate to call it bad, but I wouldn't run it.
So let me challenge you here for a second. So you mentioned being able to reduce the save by 1 or 2, depending on the dice roll. Outside of Beasts of Chaos, this is a good rule. If I was able to do that in any other faction, I like that ability. But do I even need it with the Herdstone? Do I need it? Do I need this save characteristic of -1 or -2 plus rend -1,000,000?
Honestly, no, because we have so many ways to stack rend with our spells, and then our innate rend, and now buffed up rend from the Herdstone. And there's also also another thing that brings me down on the Jabberslythe command or monstrous action is that it's a hero. If it was a unit, then I'd be like, all right, there's a lot of spice. Now it's just only a hero, so all they have to do is just keep your heroes away. And what if you fail the charge, or what if you roll the 1 on the monstrous action? So it's like, okay, well, that's just a free monster point for your opponent.
Now, there is one reason that you might bring it, and Mike in the chat here has made the comment, so I'm glad that you're connecting. We've got the brainwaves between our countries, because it does change the save characteristic. So it's not saying reduce the save by 1, it's saying to change the characteristic. So it means should you apply all out defense or the finest hour or whatever it might be, you can still only get to a maximum of a +1 to a save. So if I bring a Mega Gargant, for example, right, base save of 4, If I bring that down by 1, it means it has a base save of 5. And the best I can ever do with a whole bunch of like Mystic Shield, Finest Hours, Cover, all of those abilities, I can only ever get it up to +1.
Yeah.
So in that situation, there's some value, but it is hero based, and is it worth it is the question that I have. And I don't have the answer. It's just a rhetorical, have a think about it before you chuck it in your list.
So I don't want to shut down people's like dreams or something, because I remember when I ran a bunch of Bulgors for my LVO list, everyone told me, oh, Bulgors, they did so little, and then now I made it work. So maybe it can work, but I feel like you have to put in a lot of work to make it work. And as someone, as I saw mentioned in the chat, if Night Haunt becomes a thing, and if it gets on top of a hero, it reduces the change of save characteristics. So yeah, that's great.
But because it's hero based, most Nighthaunt players, unless the book significantly changes, they don't have any tanky heroes, and it's always the troop that are in combat. So just putting it out there, just have a think about it. I'm not completely against it, but I'm really paying for a support monster. Am I better off putting the points somewhere else? Is this a Shaggoth versus a Jabberslythe? I'm going to go Shaggoth every day of the week. But just it's some considerations before you go out, because it does sound like a good ability. I think it's tough to execute.
Yeah, it's like, it's there. It's an option. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, they will eat ghosts, and they'll be great for ghosts, being able to reduce the characteristic, because they can't benefit, positively or negatively to any save buffs, but reducing their save. But again, it's a hero thing, so just keep that in mind. And Mike is absolutely just an absolute fan of it, because he's running them at the Cherokee Open. So we'll see how your theory hammeries go, Mike. You let us know what
be a hero, Mike. Be a hero.
And thank you live as well. Appreciate the donations. I feel like a Twitch streamer at this point. Jabberslythe. Yeah, I think we talked too much about Jabberslythe. I'm just not that impressed. But hey, prove me wrong, folks. The last one, which I am a fan of, is the Chimera, which is a great monster. People have been telling me that they'd rather summon it as opposed to put it in their list. But you essentially get an extra attack characteristics. There's 4 different attack profiles on the Chimera, so you're really getting up to 4 extra attacks, which is really cool. But you've got to focus on the same unit, so you can't split those attacks at all. You must single focus into a unit. Thoughts on Chimera?
So I've always kind of liked the Chimera, and when I saw this Monstrous action, I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of spice. Because in my experience, when the Chimera gets into combat at full strength, it can either do nothing with or do a lot of damage. And I've been fortunate enough in my experience where it does a lot of damage, especially when I summoned it turn 2, charged in at the RTTs I played in today, and it just killed a lot of stuff. And also the fact that it already does a lot of damage with the shooting at just flat D6 mortal wounds. Just off the bat. There's no rolling on a 2-up or a 3-up. It's just flat D6. And now when the Chimera goes in, it's pretty much like a glass cannon. It's going to die because it's a 5-up save, 12, 13 wounds, but it just goes in and does its job. So yeah, I really like Chimeras now.
What I love about the fiery attack, which is the breath weapon, one, there is no roll, right? So it could be a great all-out defense, unleash hell, because, the -1 to hit is going to mean a whole bunch of nothing. If you were to summon it, it's a range of 14. So you could bring it into the side and shoot some of those, again, long strikes, bow snakes, whatever it might be. Cruel boy with the man skewers or the beast skewer bows. So you can do a whole bunch of damage there. And again, I mentioned this earlier on the battle tactic. The +2 to the charge makes it a much more reliable monster to come in from the side of the board and charge. So whether you just put it on the table and move it forward or bring it from the side, it's a good threat option. And the damage output's pretty good, especially you look at the avian head, which is Ren -3, plus the one from the Herdstone, so we're at Ren -4. And it's doing 4 attacks with this monstrous rampage for up to D3 damage apiece. So could be a real damage dealer.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I already thought it really did pretty good damage before the White Dwarf buff, and now with the additional +1 attack for all their weapons, it's It's one of our best monsters. I really like it, and because it generates so much threat, I actually don't mind like giving a battle tactic, letting it die, because it's in my experience, it's always going to give me so much value. The fact that it's alive and it's something that opponent has to worry about. If they leave a 5-wound hero out in the open, okay, D6 mortal wounds. There's a chance that it kills them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the other attack profiles. Like, when it starts getting wounded, it doesn't really degrade very much. Yes, the Ren will go down on the avian head. Yes, the other head will go down slightly in the damage characteristic, but for most of it, it's relatively consistent. So again, a great unit to be pulling off from the side of the board.
Yeah. I mean, if I have to rate our best monsters in BOC, in my opinion, right now, it's the Shaggoth and the Chimera. Top tier.
I would not. And why would you say that? Before I retort, like, why would you say that?
So for the Chimera, it's just the fact that like its monstrous action is just so good. And usually with the Chimera, you never want it to split attacks because it's just so swingy. You always want it to just commit and just annihilate something, which it will do like a good portion of the time. And I mean, D6 mortal wounds is good. It's just a great it's just a great profile for a monster. And I think the monster's like 200 points or 210. So I mean, it's not bad for its price, especially with the output that it can do. So that's why I rate the Chimera as one of the best monsters. And then the Shaggoth just has a lot of utility. And I'll explain that when we talk about the list.
Well, it'll come up in a second, but before we get into that, I want to unpack just slightly why would you summon it as opposed to pay for it? Because you've told me how great it is. Why wouldn't I just put it in my list? Or why wouldn't I have one in my list and then I summon a second?
I mean, it's definitely an option that you could just have one or even two in your list, and then, you can just summon another one. I just don't like doing it personally because I feel like BOC has so many great tools in our army right now, and we want to shove so much into our list, and because our summoning just feels really great right now, we don't need to, have a monster on the board already. And, let's say in the era of Long Strikes, Dragons, they can't alpha something that I haven't summoned on the board yet. So that's kind of my thinking with it.
By the way, looks like you've upset the chat because one, you didn't mention Cockatrice.
Oh, I forgot about the Cockatrice.
Cock meta is amazing. You've got to get some Cockatrice in your list. Just absolutely fantastic with some of the damage dealing. Again, it is a monster, so it'll die pretty quickly and give away that victory point. But it's a great little, and it's cheap. It was like 100 points or something. Like
it's 90
nothing.
Points.
It's nothing.
Yeah, 9 points, and also, I forget. Thanks for reminding me about the Cockatrice. I don't know how I forgot about our favorite boy. And I mean, he's 90 points. He also only costs like 5 points to summon, so you can literally just summon it turn 1 most of the time, and he could just snipe something. I mean, I've had him actually. I was going against one of my friends, Chris. He plays Seraphon, and he had Croak out. I summoned a Cockatrice, and then I rolled 6 mortal wounds against Croak, and then he rolled hot and killed himself. He exploded, so yeah.
Another unit that I was talking to the Discord about, because when I was going through this and trying to unpack it, there was a unit that I think is a bit of a sleeper that we haven't talked about, that I know why people don't rate it, but I also think the risk is worth it, and that is the Chaos Gargant that was called out by someone else as well. I had mentioned it. I think there is some really good, Vandus had called it out in the chat. I think with some of the rend abilities coming out of the Herdstone, and you look at the Chaos Gargant attack profile, there's some really good damage, especially when you start looking at the 3d6 club attacks that could be rend minus, I don't know, maybe rend -2 or rend -3, depending on what round it is, or the headbutt that can do 6 attacks at rend -4. It is a good unit, but the risk is when it rolls a double on the charge, it essentially falls over its own self, and it becomes useless.
It just does nothing. Yeah.
Thoughts? Why do you like the Chaos Gargant? Is it worth considering?
I think he's fun if you build around it, because he can do a lot of damage, but it's also really reliant on you getting off your spells. So, and BOC, unless you're running Masters of Magic, we don't have the greatest spell casting. And then also you have to rely on it charging, and you have to pray to God you don't roll a double, like you were saying. And then,
And it could be a successful double. Like you could literally hit a charge and you hit like the 11, you're like, I thought you hit 12, like a 12 or a 10. And you're like, do I re-roll this charge? Actually, can it even, no, you'd need a hero to make it re-roll the charge. Like, do I risk failing the charge so it doesn't fall over itself? And like,
yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's fun, but I would never run it because like you have to have basically you have to have the stars align, and you have to hope he doesn't whiff. And then also, he's also more expensive than one baby giant in Suns.
How many points is it?
I don't remember offhand, but I think a baby mega is 170. I think he's like 180 or 190. I might be wrong,
okay.
but yeah.
I think one cool thing though about the Chaos Gargant, just to call it out, is the drunken stagger is annoying because as a Gits player, it has the drunken stagger. So the rule, if people don't know what it is if you roll a double, the model can't charge. So even if it was a successful charge, it doesn't charge. And then basically there's like a bit of a shenanigans, and it falls over and does D3 mortal wounds to things. So it's normally going to hurt yourself as opposed to your opponent. But it does have the stuff in the bag ability, which means that you can basically, when it piles in, pull out a model within 3 inches. So I use that in my son's army a lot to pull out banners or command models or something that gives them a really nice boost. A hero that's not a hero, the like the commanding champion or whatever it is. So there is some pros and cons. But
yeah, I mean, he's just the worst man crusher. Yeah, he's just the worst man crusher. He doesn't count as 10 or 15 on an objective like he does in Suns. And I mean, usually when it comes to the Chaos Gargant, if something can go wrong, everything goes wrong with that like guy. And I feel like with how BOC plays, we do not want to rely on one piece to carry us to victory.
There you go. Vince is doing some solid maths hammering, saying a 16% chance to fail any charge, even if it's within 3 inches. Imagine getting a 3-inch charge. It can't re-roll the charge itself because it's it's not a hero, it's not a champion, and then it falls over itself. So there's a lot of babies sitting with those little boys. Razor Gores are solid. They're not monsters clearly, and they do get to re-roll the charge. So they're not bad for summoning points of view, but they're obviously not a monster. So I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, and also the thing is that like for cheaper, you could just get a Gorgon. He's 155 points versus a 180. So you just
yeah. It's more consistent, I think that's the key. And Block Tofu telling us it's 180. Yeah, at 180, it's too much. I think I'd rather just invest those points somewhere else. I think it's just too much of a risk. If it goes off, it's awesome, but there's just a high chance of failure. Or even the 3-6 attacks. It could be 3 attacks. It could be 18 attacks. Like, do you want to get that? Do you want to buff this up for 3 attacks? Probably not.
No. It's fun, but that's pretty much it.
Well. Any other comments about the White Dwarf update, or should we actually have a look at your LVO list, talk a little bit about it, and then unpack it further to go, well, what's changed? Because LVO is literally like less than a month ago. So what has changed in your thinking, and how, as a BOC player, should I consider taking advantage of these new rules?
Yeah, I have nothing else to say, and we should definitely take advantage of the new rules, and let's look at the list. I think which was what everyone's here for, and trying to understand why it worked at LVO.
I was talking to a friend of the channel, Marcella, who was talking Little Marathi. She was talking Daughters of Cain. She was actually playing as well today with Beasts of Chaos. Unfortunately, the TO didn't allow the rules because thinking there was going to be an FAQ to the White Dwarf. White Dwarfs don't get FAQ'd, so what you've got is here to stay. Matt, talk me through your list, man, because there's a lot of stuff here. You maybe use 3 columns where most people only need 2 columns. You've got your Shaggoth, you've got the Underworld's Warband, you've got a Doom Bull, you've got your Demon Prince of Khorne as an ally. I hope most folks know why that's in there, but I'm sure you'll tell us if we've missed it. You've got lots of Bulgors. You've got 3 units of 6 Bulgors, 2 units of 3 Bulgors. You've also got some Untamed Beasts. You've got a Kitty Cat. as well as 2 endless spells. Lots going on here at 150 wounds. What was this list all about? How did it win? And what drove you to make these decisions to put these units in the list? Because we'll obviously then do a reflection to say what's changed since this moment.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so as I've stated in the in the beginning of the video, I want to take Bulgors because besides the fact that they're fun, they do a lot of output. In my opinion, they do the most output for in terms of damage out of any BOC unit. So that's why I wanted to take them. So I was like, okay, I had damage. Bulgors are my damage. But because BOC dies easily, and especially if we get doubled and we have nothing to protect us from a double, then everything I invested into these Bulgors, it just dies. So that's why before LVO, I had to do a lot of thinking about BOC. And then I realized that, oh, we could ally in Slaves to Darkness. So then it brought mind, because I also played Legion of the First Prince, that, oh, Core Demon Prince. He's amazing. And if people didn't know about the Core Demon Prince, he has charges and runs within 18 inches of him. And if he goes into a garrison, it extends the aura from the base or the model of the garrison. It's pretty dumb. Like, if you get a giant garrison piece, if you get the garrison, if you sit in a garrison piece, it literally goes from like 18 inches to like potentially like 30 inches or like 40. And you pretty much can get it board wide. Actually insane. And that's why I took him into the list, because I could just do so much control.
What does that mean, though, specifically? Like, if I was not familiar with the Demon Prince, and I know people talk about it a lot on the internet, especially like Slaves to Darkness players or, anyone else that can ally them, why specifically the Khorne one? And more importantly, why does that buff become important? Like, tell me about the practicality of that buff and why. Well, it's a debuff, actually.
So the fact that you can have charges and runs within 18 inches of him allows you to dictate how a battle is fought, how the flow of the game is, and it also gives something to keep opponent. If opponent thinks they have a guaranteed charge, even if they're within 3 inches of a unit, well, that 3-inch charge becomes a 6-inch charge, and then if they're a little bit further back, it's not as reliable. And especially if you, let's say they declared a battle tactic, broken ranks, against a unit of Bulgors, and then my Bulgors and that enemy unit is within the half charge range of the Demon Prince. All I have to do is just redeploy the Bulgors, and suddenly that charge either becomes a lot harder or impossible.
And that's happened to me a few times where I've gone out for a charge, and then they've rolled a 4 or a 5 on a redeploy. And it's literally meant while within the Khorne buff range or debuff range, it's literally, I haven't been able to hit the charge. Even with like a 12, I'm physically unable to do it. So, and if I have chosen something like, as you said, Slay the Warlord or Broken Ranks or anything, it can be really, really nasty.
Yeah, and then especially because we're in such an Alpha Strike heavy meta, because we have dragons, we have Maw Crushes, we have megas, and just really fast going things. The Demon Prince keeps all those things in check, and it allows me not to get smacked like turn 1 or turn 2 by like just all the Alpha Strike. And I feel like he is definitely, it almost feels like an auto include in all BOC lists, if I have to be honest, because like I said before, BOC is an army it's a horde army of chaff, glass cannons, and control.
Yeah,
we want to dictate the pace of the game.
Yeah, and I can't pull Vince's comment up because it'll overtake our face in this particular layout. But the point that he's making is a good one. Is that it's a great ally, but to solely look at the half charge, yes, a 3-inch charge does become technically a 5 because you half a 6. There's a whole bunch of shenanigans, but where the powerful really comes in is when you do the redeploy as well, because that's when the real kicker comes in. Because a 3-inch charge, even if it becomes like a 5 or a 6, it's still statistically likely, and a reroll will get you in there. But when you start pulling back and you get a 4 or a 5 on a redeploy, or someone tries to do a long bomb charge, then it becomes really difficult. At 3 inches, though, you're just making life a little bit harder.
Yeah. I mean, thanks for the clarification on that, Vince. I didn't know that, and yeah.
Maths. Too late for maths. You got your Doom Bull. Why the Doom Bull General and why so many Bulgors? Because I think for a lot of people, when they looked at 6 Bulgors, you're either building in for redundancy because you can't get them all into combat easily. Yeah, like that's probably the big one, right? Just the coherency plays around with this a lot.
Yeah, so I like the Doom Bull because, well, first off, he makes Bulgor's battle line. So, and I want to run Bulgor, so he's great for that. And the other great thing about him too is that he has a command ability that if a Warherd unit, like so either Gorgon himself or Bulgors are within 12 inches of him, wholly within, he can give them +1 to wound. So he can make basically, with how kind of like my synergies work out, because I have Grass Shack, so let's say if I'm going against a Mega and if my spell goes off for a Savage Bolt, which, they take D3 mortal wounds, and the entire BOC army gets a +1 to hit. So I charged 6 Bulgors into a Mega, which happened in one of my games. They have the free +1 to hit, and then the Doom Bull just pops them, wounding on 2s, and especially because my Bulgors, 6 mans, are Hunters of the Heartland, they can't be roared at. So they're hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s with like 4 Bulgors are attacking with 7 or 9 attacks. And then at worst, maybe you get like 6 or 9 damage. At best, you can get up to like 21 or 27 damage with full Bulgors. It's actually insane. And then they have their Horde attacks too. So I think that's why I really like the Doom Bull. He can be fighty, but he's not too fighty. And he just provides a lot of utility for my list, which is what all BOC heroes are. They can fight, but they're mostly there for the utility.
And he's certainly one that I would put into combat for that battle tactic, the first round being in combat. A Doom Bull General is definitely someone that I would consider if that situation arose. I will ask you, was Grashrak the reason you've primarily taken this model is for the War Scroll spell, that +1 to hit from the damage?
Yes. That is like the biggest reason why, because if Savage Bolt goes off, and if I put it against, because again, with how the current meta is right now with Iron Jaws, Dragons, or something like that, if I put that against a unit, the entire army, my entire BOC army, outside of my Slaves of Darkest allies, gets +1 to hit against it. And usually with Bulgors, we usually hit on 4s. So that's kind of like our biggest thing. So if I'm able to not spend a command ability for all-out attack, then I just dogpile in the Bulgors into one unit, and they generally just delete something most of the time because they just do so much raw damage with just 3 damage attacks. Even a unit of 3 is such a huge threat.
Why did you go the great axes as opposed to the dual axes? Because I know, spoiler alert, when we go into your new list, and we'll get to it pretty soon, I don't want to spend too much time on this one, but you have switched out some of the great axes and you've gone dual axes. Why the great axes, all of them?
Because we didn't have the Ren buff like we did now at the time, and because even though they don't have a lot of attacks per Bulgor with great axes, the fact that I can just spike and just like, again, at worst, I do like 3 or 6 damage, even the unit of 3, but then with 3 Bulgors can potentially get up to like maybe 15, 18 damage. A unit of 3 can do that for 130 points. And I feel like because great axes just do so much damage, raw damage, and then with the old Herdstone, if they're within range, I go from Ren 2 to Ren 3. And so, yeah, it just allowed me to punch through safe stacking really easily. So that's why I like to take great axes, because raw damage and punches through safe stacking.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the benefit of the dual axes comes in to be able to re-roll 1. So if you had, put a +1 to hit, so they're now hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s, 6s to wound mortals in addition. So they can do absolute carnage under the right conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Grashak is just a great way to give everyone +1 hit because I like to dogpile something. And if I have to like get into the rest of the list and to explain how it works, is that Demon Prince provides me a lot of control with have run and have charge. Grashak, if his spell goes off, gives me +1 hit, and he also comes free with his Warband, which I just use as additional screen. So then with how the screen, so when people look at my list, they're thinking, I don't have a lot of screen, which is like, that's fine for me. I have Unit of Untamed Beast. They have their pregame move, and they occupy a lot of space. And then I have Grishak's Spoilers. I put them out. And then, unironically, my 2 units of 3 Bulgors, I actually use them as a second layer of screen in case I get double turned. Because if they died, cool. There's the 100. They have to throw like a Maw Crusher at 130 points. Fine with me. But then if they don't die, 3 Bulgors can just do a lot of damage as I explained. And then, especially if they give me first, I usually can summon a unit of Ungors as like an additional screen, just to like roadblock them. And I have Demon Prince to have charges and stuff like that. And if they're in range of the Shaggoth. The Shaggoth has a spell called Hailstorm. Hailstorm goes off on a 6 or a 7. It has move, run, and charge. And that can stack with the Demon Prince command ability for having charges and runs. So you put that on one unit.
Isn't it range 30?
It's like 21, 24 inches.
Oh,
yeah, it's pretty massive.
Range 30. It's a big one.
It's pretty insane. And also, if you put the Shaggoth in the garrison, well, the range just goes up.
You and your garrisons.
Yeah. Yeah.
So... like that combination of the Dragon Ogre being able to the Shaggoth being able to manipulate movement, as well as the Demon Prince, is a great control. And being able to, again, stop people from scoring their battle tactics, being able to get onto objectives. There's some real good... It's 21. Thank you, folks. I swear, for some reason, I was thinking it was 30. I don't know why. Maybe it was some shenanigans I was thinking about. Who knows? Old whatever. But
yeah,
21
and also
it is.
As Mike was mentioning too, if you want to get in range, the Shaggoth and all Dragon Ogres at the hero phase, beginning of the hero phase, they move D6 every single time at the start of the hero phase. So he just moves D6 if I want to get him in range of a spell, and that makes it a lot easier. And then to explain the artifact I took on him, Tanglehorn Familiars. Not a lot of people know about this one. I was introduced to this tech by another BOC player named Brian after we played a TTS game against each other. And what this thing essentially does is that once per game at the start of the enemy turn, if they have a wizard within 12 inches of the Shaggoth can just say, nope, you cannot cast at all for that turn only, once per game. So that's really good against certain things that just want to, like when I was using it in LVO, I used it against Reichner, who can get bonuses to cast, and then or I can use it against a Mega who wants to give himself a Mystic Shield, or if I go against Lumineth, maybe if I get him in range of Techless, shuts off his entire, or Nagash shuts off his entire magic phase for a turn. So yeah,
no, I dig it. And look, you've obviously got the Kitty Cat as well, which is a great way to reduce again the amount of damage that comes back to you, because if you are successful in the little dice game that you play, they're going to fight last. So again, it gets more of those Bulgors in doing damage without you taking nearly as much damage. And then you've already controlled it as well with the Demon Prince, with the Shaggoth stuff, plus some of the screens and Untamed Beast coming in. And I was going to ask you about Untamed Beast. Did you find that you were able to push back any deep striking or any of the summoning or any type of reserve stuff by having that free pre-game move from the Untamed Beast?
Yep, I was able to create a roadblock, especially if my summoning went off and I could summon a unit of Ungors. I would essentially have 2 or maybe even 3 layers of screen before they even try to get into like my Bulgors or my heroes. And then because I have so much control too with the have charge, have move, and then also before I forget, with the something else to say about the Shaggoth too is that I actually like to use him as the guy that cuts himself. So I call him the emo Shaggoth because he takes D3 mortal wounds, and then at the end of every combat phase, including the opponent, you just heal 1 wound. So yeah. He just has a lot of healing, and then if you need to heal him, you just do your heroic action healing, or you cast a spell, Summon Lightning, which can heal himself. So, yeah, that's why I usually leave the Shaggoth behind most of the time by the Herdstone just to do that. But at some point, I was able, if I wanted to like stop a spellcaster from doing their thing, I just throw him forward and just try to shut down their spellcasting for a turn. And then with the cat, which you mentioned, so with the cat and Wildfire Taurus, I have two forms of fight last. BOC is an army that does not want to fight fairly because we generally have a 5-6 up save, maybe a best of 4 up save across the army, like, board wide. And the way to like mitigate, like, high damage coming into you, and we never want to fight fairly with you go, I go. With two sources, so with Wildfire Taurus, it goes off on a 7, and then it ends wholly within 6 inches of the caster, and then it moves 12 inches at the end of every hero phase. So essentially, you have this bull just running around, hitting things for D3 mortal wounds on a 2-up, and making things fight last. And then I've learned, so the Wildfire Taurus can actually like affect your BOC units too. So that's why I've always learned to be really careful about positioning it carefully. And even if it's within 3 inches of like your BOC units, if it's your turn and they fight last, you still all your fight last units in your turn still take precedence over the enemy unit that's fighting last. And also, if the opponent wants to unbind it, it goes off. They need an 8 to unbind it, so it's not really easy to like get rid of. And if they don't get rid of it, it just goes crazy. And I also like using the Wildfire Taurus to actually move block and to deny charges because the base of it is so big. So let's say if they declare a unit or a hero for like slay the warlord or kill a monster or bring it down, they tell me their battle tactic and they don't unbind the Wildfire Taurus. Cool. I just move the Wildfire Taurus in front of the model, and it's like, can you end within 3 inches of this unit?
Yeah, because you can definitely move through it, but to end the charge, it's a model there, so you've got to keep that in mind for positioning. One question that did come up that I don't want to lose is a lot of BOC players are going to have that Brayherd Shaman next to the Herdstone for a bit of stabby, and that sacrificial unit. Your list doesn't have either of those. So did you struggle with summons? Did you have some other alternative to getting some extra summoning points? Or
if I
was
didn't
that
have
not important for you?
It's not that important for me because I always think about what I do. So like, let's say if I send the Shaggoth just to like shut off someone's spell casting for like a turn, maybe I have Grishak at the Herdstone, or maybe I summon something, depending on where it is, and I just ran it by the Herdstone and I do the D3 mortal wounds. But honestly, this list with what I run is not, the LVO list is not super reliant on summoning. It's more like a bonus, honestly, because of how I'm not running all herd with this list. It's just swingy. I mean, the bet with this list, all I literally just summoned was just Ungors, just to steal objectives, to be chaff, and everything else. Yeah.
Did you find, probably one more burning question that I want to get to your other list, which is the new version of the list, is one of the rules that I often forget about is the stuff that came to BOC through Broken Realms Kragnos. And obviously both Brayherd, Warherd, and Thunderscorn all got a bunch of rules. And I was just looking at what Warherd got again, and that was the D3 mortal wounds on the charge on a 4-up, or if there is 3 or more models, it becomes
four more models.
It's 4 or more models.
Yeah.
No, it's 3 or more. Add 2 to the roll. After a friendly Warherd unit makes a charge, pick one enemy unit within one of that and roll a dice. Add 2 if it's a Warherd unit has a hero or there's 3 or more models. On a 4-up, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. So I guess long story short, with a whole bunch of 6 model Bulgors, did you find you were doing a whole bunch of mortal wounds on the charge before you started cutting face with Great Axe?
Yeah, it was actually super impactful. Like, yeah, it's swingy, but then if I'm making something like, for example, fight last, I dogpile I dogpile 1 or 2 units of Bulgors into a unit. They do impact hits, and I remember going against even against like a Mega Gargant, I was able to get so many Bulgors around, and I was able to do like 9 mortal wounds on impact hits because I just rolled pretty hot. Like that's what you can roll. So then it actually adds up to the damage that Bulgors can do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I would forget about. And I even, to be honest with you, when I did the video review for the White Dwarf rule, I completely forgot that Gore units that were either in reserve, in ambush, or set up in the turn get to reroll charges. So there's another little way to do some sideboard
Yeah,
shenanigans.
that's only for Gores, the unit Gores.
Yeah,
not
yeah. It's not just not ungores, just Gore units.
Yeah. And I think, so I guess with how everything this list works, and I guess to explain my LVO list in a nutshell, has a lot of tiny MSU, or not, I mean, not all MSU, but it has a lot of like small hammers running around where like if someone wants to someone is always going to overinvest into killing one of my BOC units, and I'm not going to feel that bad from it. I'm not going to take the loss that badly. But then they have to also consider all the control I can have. 2 sources of fight last. All my spells, denying spell casting, and then Doom Bowl's Masters of Magic. He can reroll casts, and a lot of the BOC spell lore is amazing for reducing saves, movement, stuff like that. Core and Demon Prince. I mean, it just all adds up. And also, I remember when I was watching your interview with Gavin the other day, and I think he was talking about how like we're shifting towards like a meta of wound density and maybe MSU. I actually think we're heading there. Like this is, to me, this list was the answer to a lot of things in the current meta right now. And I've tested this against like dragons and like Vanguard Raptors and shooting lists, and the biggest thing I've noticed with this list is that they don't. I actually make it hard for them to prioritize which targets to go for because I don't care if I lose one thing.
Literally, that was what I wanted to say next, because when I revisit this list, it reminds me of the conversation that I had with Jeremy, who ran the Phoenician list and was top 8 with Phoenician. And he had said in the chat that he didn't care what model lost. Like at times, he got hand in a gash twice. His Phoenixes, right? He has 2 Frostheart Phoenixes, and both of those got hand in a gash. But he didn't care because from his list point of view, there was no linchpin that if that model died, it's game over. And when I look at, taking down that Khorne Demon Prince, cool. I've still got 3 units of 6 Bulgors to deal with. I've still got the Shaggoth to deal with. I've still got the Kitty Cat to deal with. There's a lot of threats that this list doesn't crumble if that one spell doesn't go off, or that one unit dies, or that one unit didn't do there's a lot of consistency, and I really dig this. One burning question before I move on to the new list. And I was just thinking about this because obviously, you go onto Twitter and the world's ending. It's always some units, the worst unit in the game. And Dragons is obviously causing major headaches in the meta. And I was thinking about the Untamed Beasts, and I was thinking about the pre-game move, the screen, and I was thinking about some of these things like Fulminators coming from the side through Living City. I was thinking about Dragons being able to get that free hero face charge once per game through the Night Draconis. There's a whole bunch of these little things right now that people are thinking about, well, how do I respond? Do you think the Untamed Beast with the free pre-game move can help you protect with another layer and push those attacks back further? Because the dragons only have like a 12-inch charge, right? So you can push them back from your juicy stuff a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I mean they're because of the utility that they provide of doing the pre-game move, and they provide additional screen. And let's say there's that off chance that the opponent doesn't finish off the whole unit. Cool, I could just have them they could just fall back to be additional screen, or actually have them run around the map and just try to steal an objective. Like there's a lot of like cheeky stuff you can do, and because the base size of the base size of all those models are like so weird and they're not consistent, you could actually make a pretty decent like screening line, which worked out for me, and that's why I've taken them. And I feel like Slaves to Darkness, like we have a lot of good choices from that book to ally in.
Yeah, some great choices and very cheap ones. Like hell, you've got 3 allies in your list, right? Like that's heaven for a lot of people. Like that's great. Let's talk your new list, and be mindful, folks, here. The War Scroll Builder's not updated yet, so the grand strategy isn't Hold the Line. It's in fact the new Beasts of Chaos grand strategy, the Protect the Herdstone. And there are some consistencies. You've still got the Shaggoth, you've still got the Grashrak, you've still got the Doomball, you've still got the Demon Prince. We've got a bit of a mixture here in the units, though. You've got some things that have stayed the same, some things that have changed, whether it's the paired axes have come in, or you've dropped a whole bunch of Bulgors as well, and you've gone double Kitty Cat, no Untamed Beasts. So what has changed either from LVO and or because of White Dwarf?
Well, ever since White Dwarf has come out. So this is the new list right now. So basically, I dropped 2 units of Bulgors and I dropped the Untamed Beast because I was thinking, because our summoning is really good. I can summon a lot of screen and roadblocks anyway, so I'm not too reliant on the Untamed Beast. And because I found that 2 sources of Fight Last was really good in LVO, why not 3 sources of Fight Last? So now that's why I have 2 cats and the Wildfire Taurus. And another great thing I forgot to mention with the previous list is that the Mindstealer Sphinx, they're monsters. They give you like free monster points. You can get Ferocious Advance super easily, unless you mess it up like me in one of the LVO games where I just failed it. They're monsters, and then they can do Monstrous Takeover. They can, if you need them to get into combat, as a case, they can go in after you made something fight last, and they can just roar, and you don't have to worry about them smacking the cat, because at that point, well, all the Bulgors are just probably going to kill whatever they're on anyway with like -3 or -4 rend or -5 rend. And it allows, so then, and the reason why I'm taking 3 endless spells too, which is pretty unconventional, is I forgot to talk about Doomblast Third Torn in my last list.
I was going to ask you that because I've got the battle time in front of me, but it's the old War Scroll, so I couldn't think of what changed with the horn because I've only ever seen the horn once, and that's my conversion with a Mega Gargant holding it like an actual horn. I've actually never seen the horn on the table. I've seen more of the flock than I have the horn.
Yeah, no, everyone uses it as a conversion piece, but no, there's a use. So it's 45 points, so it's really cheap to add in a list, and it goes off on a 6. And it doesn't need to be wholly within. After you cast it and it goes off, you just put it within 12 inches of the caster, and it creates a -1 to hit bubble. It starts off at 3 inches. Not really significant at first, but if they don't unbind it, it goes up 3 inches every single battle round. And I've had games where it just goes up to like a -1 hit in a 9-inch aura. And so what I usually do is with this list, I actually really like to go first, and that's what I actually prefer with this list because then I get to cast. I could do all of my control, cast all my spells and everything. And then when I put out my 2 endless spells, the Doomblast Dirtor and the Wildfire Taurus, it forces opponents to waste their unbinds or casts just to get rid of them. Because if they don't get rid of them, they're just going to go rampant. And also, when it comes back to my turn again, even if they do get rid of those endless spells, it works out for me because then I can still cast. I still have a bunch of other spells I can cast in my BOC, like Hailstorm, the -1 to save spell, and everything. And I feel like and BOC is like with Masters of Magic and like everything, we don't have a lot of reliable spell casting, but when it goes off, it's really impactful. So which is why I like to just bust out all these spells too, which makes opponents think a lot, and it adds to the control aspect of this list. And then to talk about Cogs is also another cheap endless spell, and it gives me a chance to give another cast. So like let's say I put it on Grishak. First, he can cast his Savage Bolt for the +1 to hit for all BOC units against 1 unit, and then maybe if they're in range, he can cast Tendrils of Atrophy for the -1 save. So it's pretty insane value for like what it does, and I don't care if somebody unbinds or not. And usually, when I was testing it out at the RTTs today and on TTS, it's given me a lot of value, and that's why I've stuck with 3 endless spells in the list.
Question from the chat. Why would you not go with Ungor Raiders? So the response from the people talking is obviously points. Points definitely the difference between the Untamed Beast and the Ungor Raiders. Certainly that would be a factor. Is that the only reason why you wouldn't take something that's native? And obviously Ungor Raiders have a shooting attack as well, which can help in some situations. But at minimum, pre-game move.
So I think because the way I built my list, I really can't fit in Ungor Raiders, but the great thing about the BOC summoning now is that it's just really easy to bust out like Ungors or just Ungor Raiders. And I'm slightly down on Ungor Raiders right now because with the old Herdstone, it was really easy for them to get -1 to hit on their bows. Now, because the Ren buff only affects melee weapons, so that's why I've not really taken it. And because I have so much control on my list, I really don't need the pregame move because I generally play defensively. And because I roll ones so many times on like my priority from turn 1 to battle round 1 to battle round 2. I have just prepared a gameplay where it's like I can take the hit, I can take the double, where I don't need the pregame move because I have all of my control tools out and everything. And like I said, someone is always going to overinvest into killing something in BOC just because all of our stuff is like generally like not too expensive points wise.
I guess the only concern I would have is the things that are coming out of reserve, and a lot more people are putting units into reserve because again, long strikes, Lumineth, bow snakes, cruel boy shooting, iron drakes, some real heavy output out there, and people don't want their nice shiny toys being shot off the board. So, and especially if you can teleport or come in from reserve, dragons, another good example. Especially if Gavin's Living City list becomes more popular, I can see a real need for that pre-game move just to push things out so that I get into your juicy targets. But I hear what you're saying, and I guess with your summoning and being able to put bodies on the board, it's not necessarily that important.
Yeah.
And I guess if you need those pre-game moves as well, you could always put those kitty cats, those mind stealers into Alpha Beast Pack.
Sadly, they cannot. They're not behemoths. They classify as troops.
That's right. There was some crack idea I had, and I remember thinking about this because they're monsters, but they're not behemoths. And Alpha Beast Pack is behemoth. I was thinking it was monster. Damn, how cool would that be? Pre-game move for a double kitty cat.
Oh, if I could do that, I would definitely. That would be an auto include with my cats, if I could do it.
Both of your lists are high drops, and I said this to a couple of previous guests, and even Gavin. Gavin's been running some pretty high lists, and if you were listening to Twitter would be saying the importance of getting to the bottom and going, how low can you go with your drops? 1 drop, 2 or 3. But you're still at like 8, 9 drops. You're relatively high. You're not dictating the who goes first in most situations. Did you find that ever came into play, or why aren't you concerned about going double battle regiment?
So with how BOC operates, because we're an army, we want to have all our tools and everything, and we want to have as much artifacts as we can. I feel like it's just the nature of our army because we lean so much into having hordes, control, and then just bodies and just, raw damage. We don't need to ever build into like having 2 battle regiments or being low drops because we want to have all the tools available. Because I feel like with battle regiment, it essentially makes list building like constrictive. And I feel like with, in the case of living cities, it works out because everything just fits into the 1 drop. But in this case, with how BOC just works and everything, I really don't need it because because some armies can deal with being double turned, some can't, and some wants first. And the way I've designed my list is because usually there's so many like expensive hammers in the meta right now. And the way to deal with that is just to have so much control and always force the hammers to overextend because it's like, I don't care if I lose a unit of 6 Bulgors. You're going to care if I kill 4 dragons with a bunch of Bulgors with Ren 3, Ren 4. So I think, and also because like, I feel like drops do matter depending on the army and list you're playing. I think people have this misconception that like, oh, you should go low drops, 1 drop, always thing for which, it definitely is something you have to consider and it definitely matters. But that's why like I built the list the way I have because I have so much like wound density. I will always force long strikes or something to split shots if they really want to like finish off something. And because of how good my summoning is, it's like, cool. You kill this unit of 3 Bulgors, well, they're back the next turn anyway, or 2 turns from now, or a bunch of other things. So I think this list is really focused on making someone overcommit to kill something or get me off objective, and then I hit them back really hard with all my spell casting, control, and then my Bulgors. Yeah.
Where do you think BOC, and I realize it's getting late and I got to cook dinner myself, is there, Where do you think BOC now sit in the meta, and I guess the power levels of the game? You know, previous to this White Dwarf, you'd hear probably most people agree that you're at the bottom, along with Gitz and Nighthaunt. Although I think people are a bit too harsh on Nighthaunt. You know, Khorne is not doing that well, and you were kind of at this bottom four. Do you think this is an average 3-2 kind of list? Do you think you could be going 5-0? And I guess I'm talking the regular BOC player. Someone who masters a list can definitely go 5-0 or 4-1. What power level do you think BOC is now at with the White Dwarf?
So BOC before was at best maybe a 3-2 army, in my opinion, if you play really well and everything works out. And it's also dependent on if your opponent doesn't know what BOC does, which is I find is funny enough
97% of people.
Yeah. But then, yeah, so basically it came down to, because I think with BOC players, anyone that gets into this army, and this is, my tip for new people to get into this army is a general's army. It's not reliant on like 1 or 2 units just killing everything and just doing everything. You have to make sure that every single tool, every single unit in your army has a role and purpose. And as weird as it sounds, you want to make sure that when a BOC unit dies, it has a purpose, because we're an army of trash. But when all the trash come together, then it just kind of like, it just works. And now with the White Dwarf buffs and everything, I think we can honestly be consistently a 3-2 army, maybe even 4-1. And I feel like things work out. I feel so confident with how strong BOC is because of how the meta is right now. If the meta shifts back into hordes or more spell casting, then maybe I can see us going down, because that's what actually we struggle into. Or Nighthaunt ends up being like really problematic for us.
Yes, and we know we know Nighthaunt's going to get an update with the next book. You know, we've got Fury of the Deep, so we'll have we can only assume Fire Slayers and Deepkin will get a book in the near future. We can only assume Daughters of Cain and Nighthaunt will be the next ones, and depending on the popularity. So I guess, if I think about my discussion with Gavin, literally the other day, he mentioned that it was a real mixture of having quality attacks, so having lots of volume at low damage, low rend. You had some mortal wounds and also some high rend and high damage. So I think the risk potentially is if you go too hard on Bulgors or too hard on Dragon Ogres, depending on the types of matchups, you may struggle a little bit. So thinking about where you can get some high volume attacks as well would make you a much more well-rounded and probably handle a tournament better than just going all in. And if the things go well, like for yourself, Matt, you definitely can go 4-1, right? You've already proved it. But think about the types of armies in your scene.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the nice thing about BOC is that because we have so many units in our book, you can really build depending on how your local meta is, or just the overall meta in general. Like, I run Bulgors because I love Bulgors. And besides the fact that I think they do a lot of damage, but maybe Dragon Ogres are really good, or something else is really good. I think the beauty about this BOC book right now is, yes, it was one of the weaker 2.0 books, but now because of the Ren buff, it just gives us so many more options. And I love playing books where it's like, this build, you just run this one build and that's all you can run. Like, for example, Daughters right now, which is kind of unfortunate for them. But
well, hopefully the book updates. But
yeah,
Paul, to your point, yes, the original list that we showed was 1990. A 10-point difference with Ungor Raiders from Untamed Beast would still be 2K. I guess I'd challenge you to say, well, by going at 1990, there's a chance for Triumph versus a 2,000-point list. And the 10-point difference between Ungor Raiders and Untamed Beasts, I think I'd rather the Triumph, but I'm not building towards it. I don't know, Matt, do you have any thoughts on that? Because your original LVO list could actually have gone, according to the maths here, you could have done Ungor Raiders over Untamed Beasts.
I mean, I could have, but I just kind of like the Untamed Beast for what they do, and maybe there's that like small, like tiny % chance that I could get Triumph. I mean, that's kind of why I did it.
Spoiler alert, it's actually now 20 points. Mike's
20
clarifying, it's actually not 10, it's 20, so then it definitely couldn't have happened. So Just to clarify. Cool. So it's
Yeah.
not a 10-point difference, it's a 20-point difference. Any lists that you think are going to struggle with, Matt? Anything that you would be concerned about facing at your next tournament?
So here's my take on actually I feel like what we really struggle into. Seraphon, Thunder Lizard, and any variation of Seraphon, because they can just deny all my control, all my spell casting. Thunder Lizard, especially with the -1 damage on like most of their units. And then I feel like they can be either much more mobile, tanky than us, and it's not hard for them to kill our stuff. So I think strong spellcasting armies like them, Lumineth, especially if they lead into Techless or the Fox build, because unless we just rely on our Cox or Chimeras to do range damage, then they're, the Foxes are just going to go rampant and just like deny us a lot of movement. And then Techless, if there's a lot of MSU, Techless goes, awesome. I love a lot of MSU. Then he just pops that one spell where I think it's just like you just take a bunch of mortal wounds and a bunch of MSU or -2 leadership board wide. And then Zinch, because they can just do a lot of raw damage output and they're just so much better at spell casting than you. Like I play against a guy in our local meta named Shane, and he like traditionally just whoops me all the time, even with all this control. And so yeah, those three to me are the biggest threats. And
what about Nurgle? Because I think we're on the cusp of Nurgle hitting the scene. I think it's taken a while for Nurgle players to get into the right mindset, because the play style of Nurgle has fundamentally changed. It's not like a minor tweak between books. It is completely changed. And I think we're starting to slowly see good Nurgle lists kind of appear. And they are renowned for taking a punch and then smiling at you through their 5-up ward, being able to heal. They've got summoning. They've got some ability to restrict pile-in as well through things like your Sloppy Bile Piper. Do you think that would be a concern for Beasts of Chaos?
Yes, and I've played against Nurgle a couple of times. I actually was playing a TTS game against Nurgle last night, ran by Matt Barker, who won top ITC Nurgle. And then Glotkin makes the match really tough because I have control, yes, but he also is a control piece of himself, because it's like, okay, cool, if I try to get a battle tactic or if I try to move in something, it's like, okay, anything within 12 inches of him, cool, this unit is going to charge. And the nice thing about, and the good thing about, or the interesting tech about Nurgle is that if you take the reroll charge triumph, you can use that triumph during the opponent's charge phase with the Glotkin, which
with the
terrifying.
Glotkin counter charge command point.
Yeah, so then not only Glotkin just changes the matchup, I have to play so much more carefully. I can't play as like aggressively even if I get my control tools off. There's also the Sloppity Bile Piper, and that was a huge factor in the game I played yesterday, where it's like it made the difference where he just didn't let me. He charged. He made sure I was outside of like 1 inch or 2 inches, because Bulgor is only 1 inch, and I just couldn't pile onto the objective at all unless I retreated. But then I would just waste a turn or more getting into it.
And you can get pinned by a Beast of Nurgle or a Nurgling unit so easily, and you don't have very good shooting attacks. So to be able to pop that Sloppy Bile Piper while being pinned by some of these units can be quite challenging. So maybe that's the reason why you want a Cygor, maybe to get some shooting attacks and some quality shooting attacks. Maybe. But Matt, is there any...
Sorry, I think the matchup against Nurgle is definitely like winnable, but it's hard, and I feel like it makes it it makes it an interesting game. And I think another bad matchup, I say, as Gareth was saying, is Khorne. I actually think Khorne can give BOC a run for its money, is because I like to run a lot of bodies in MSU. Khorne, Blood Tithe, so actually makes the matchup really interesting.
Plus, you can do like the 6-inch pile-in as well, right? So they can kind of run up, avoid some of your Khorne Demon Prince abilities and then just pile in. So a lot of cool shenanigans. And I guess, we won't get bogged too much, but I think I wanted you to think about, folks, what you might be up against and thinking about how you build the list. And I think there's definitely multiple lists out there, and Matt's definitely just one of them, and I'm going to try to get Joel's opinion as well. But I think there's definitely a Dragon Ogre build. I think there's some sleeper stuff there. I think there's some good Skyfire stuff out there in the meta right now. You could do some really good things, and I still think there is a a gore ungore build out there. And I think you're not playing into double reinforcing or even single reinforcing your gore or your ungore. It's just multiple waves of just cheap bodies that are just kind of being thrown at, clogging up the board, taking up objective space. So I don't know what that list will look like, especially as you start getting into like Ren 1, Ren 2 on just like lots of gore and ungore. But Matt's examples have been great, and it's already, you're already seeing some good results from LVO, but also locally and on Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, and then if there's anything else I have to say about BOC and just general shoutouts I want to do, BOC, I don't think it's gonna be like an army people meta chase, because one, you have to buy so many models, and it's just a lot of summoning, and it's an army you definitely have to love, because it's not like an army you could just like play and just like turn off your brain. Like, it's very much, you have to think about every single move. And before the White Dwarf and even after like the White Dwarf, if you make a single mistake, or if you're just not like precise about everything, it's just game losing. But it's very rewarding being an underdog and just like punching above your weight class. Like, even the most humble Ungor can do something. Yeah, and I think, the White Dwarf came at a really unexpected time, and, it's going to be fun seeing, not just my result, but everybody else's results with BOC. And yeah, and I guess, sorry, go on.
I think I was sad that you got a White Dwarf, not because you got a White Dwarf, but it probably means that a Battle Tome rewrite's probably far off. So it's probably the negative to getting a White Dwarf.
I mean, it is a negative, but at the same time, the Ren buff and the Rally buffs have opened up so much options. It almost feels like I'm playing with a half of a new book, which is like, fantastic to me. And to a lot of BOC players, like, we were all like just cheering, mooing, braying, just that like we just got all these buffs and everything. And I feel like it's brought a lot of like life back into like list building and the army, which is what a lot of BOC players we like to do.
Yeah, and considering as well, like there were big rumors out there that you would be combined with Slaves to Darkness. So it was like, we're going to be rolled into Slaves to Darkness, the big rumor from 4chan, up until, oh my gosh, we have a whole bunch of rules and we're now awesome. I think, if anything, people were concerned you're going to get nerfed as opposed to I think, myself as a Gits player, I wish to be Beast of Chaos. That's now a new term,
Yeah. I mean,
you got...
Before, like we were saying in the AOS Coach Discord, the BOC chat and the Gloomspite Gits chat, we have like a brotherhood where it's just like, we always cheer for each other. And now we want to cheer for our Gits brothers to rise up with us,
Well, it's like, back in the day, there's the term squatted, right? Because there's that 40k faction that used to be around called the Squats, which is really now just KO. When an army gets done and you get removed from the game, you're now squatted. I think now anytime you get a boost, you're balked. So
yeah, we're balked. Yeah, and I guess
we're balked.
So we'll see where the meta goes with BOC entering in, and then it's gonna spice things up, and to not to take up much more of your time, and thank you for bringing me on. This is like my first like web interview ever, like just publicly, so hopefully I wasn't rambling on too much. And then to do some general shout outs, I like to shout out the BOC Discord, or the BOC, the AOS like sub chat, where a lot of guys like, Grunt, Rothgar, Papa Bear, and some other guys for like, talking to me about lists, like, getting me excited about like list teching for BOC. And then I also like to do a shout out for like the SoCal community, because they got me into RTTs like back in 2019 or 2020, and I just fell in love with just playing at events and just trying a bunch of weird stuff out. Like, the group of guys I play with, they're like some of the most fun guys, to play AOS ever with, because we just get wild. It's always a party for us. And then, I feel like, playing with that community a lot helped me become the player I am today. So I will always be grateful for them. And one last thing to say is, look out, the rest of the United States. The West Coast, SoCal, United is coming. We have a team.
Okay. All right. Stay
and
tuned,
Age of
because
Ligmar.
It's not only because it's goat time, but it's also going to be SoCal time, it seems. So
Yeah.
it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing about BOC. I was happy to have you, not only because you've done so well, but also, I think you've brought some really good thinking to the faction. And I would love to hear from people how they're thinking about BOC now you got the new White Dwarf, right? I've already mentioned Skyfires. I've already mentioned Dragon Ogres. I think there is an MSU style Gore Ungore build. I'm sure there's a really good summoning build, really tapping into all herd and just getting lots of Chimera and just great models on the table. Let us know what's going on. People are loving you, great job overall. You are the champion of the server. Would you just far out? And if people want to know more about Roz, aka Matt, one, I've got your Twitter handle below, so follow Matt and talk. And he is definitely a faction leader in my Discord server. And not only is he doing that, but he clearly knows how to play the game because he's gone 4-1 at the LVO, 3-0 at a local tournament. What's the next big tournament you're going to be going to?
So, I forgot this other shout out I'm doing. Speaking of that, I'm going to go to I'm just a shout out guy right now. I am going to Old Town Throwdown 4. It is basically our local scenes, like big tournaments where we have our GTs or like majors. That's what we call it, Old Town Throwdown. So that's next week. And you
gonna see me hot tub photos again? I think it was the last time you were sending me hot tub streams. Like,
yeah, no, we really like hot tubs in SoCal. So but Old Town Throwdown 4, highly recommend. And we're about to they're about to host a bunch of other Old Town Throwdowns throughout the year. So if you're in California or you want to travel, definitely get over here. Best events in the West Coast.
All right, there's some big love and big recommendations there. Matt, you've been an absolute legend. Thank you so much. All of the Bray herds out there, you have been absolute legends. Thank you for all the donations. I can now eat this month. Greatly appreciated. And you've been an absolute legend. And let me know in the comment section, you know how it is. Let me know what is going on and how are you building? Am I too hard on Cygors? Is there some secret tech in the Jabberslythe that I'm clearly missing? Or is there something that you have found that Matt hasn't called out? Let us know in the comments. Matt, you're a legend. I'm going to end the stream. Have a good night, folks. Thanks for hanging out.
Peace out, man.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.